Good morning, everybody. Merry Christmas if that's what you just celebrated, and Happy New Year a few days ahead of time. I am Annie Brock, the president and CEO of the Leader Transition Institute. We are a 501c3 organization based in Maryland, serving globally. We work with people who we prepare and walk beside people who are making big pivots in their lives, with a special focus on service members, veterans, and their spouses who are transitioning from active duty military service to the civilian sector. So I am excited and thrilled to be here today with Sheneke Harris. Welcome, Sheneke. Thank you for being on with us today.
Thank you.
And so Sheneke is an expert in the field of self-care. And each month, or almost each month, LTI, the Leader Transition Institute, we offer a program called Changing Focus, Moving from We to Me. And it is designed to work with the service members that I talked about ahead of time, or just a few minutes ago. And each month, then we do a session like this, a training and coaching session to, number one, stay connected with people, because it's really important. And Sheneke will talk about that today. Connection is a very important part of self-care. We want to stay connected with the people that we've worked for. So and we want to work with, and we want to teach them more and have them learn more as they go through their transition process. So that's why we're here this morning. This is our December training and coaching call. So if you are new to LTI, mark the fourth Tuesday of every month, 12 o'clock Eastern time on your calendar, and you will find us at whatever platform you're on right now, whether that's LinkedIn, whether that's YouTube, whether that's Facebook or Twitter. So let me take a moment to introduce Sheneke. Sheneke Harris is the founder and owner of SheSpeakz, and she's going to tell us about how she came to develop this company for herself. And she encourages women to embrace their life journey while telling their personal stories. And that helps women to heal from their past and walk boldly into their destiny that God has designed for them. I'm really excited. She is a consummate human resources and social service professional. She's got over 20 years of experience. And she truly believes that when women collaborate with, connect, help, and support other women, that amazing things happen. And she's also an author. She's the author of the Hey Sis Reflection Guide, a combination of reflection points and personal self-improvement challenges to help women become the best version of themselves. So welcome, Sheneke, to our December training and coaching session. I'm really glad, very appreciative that you are willing to take part of your holiday time to spend it with us.
Yes, Annie, thank you so much for allowing me to be on the LTI platform this month to talk about self-care. Self-care is near and dear to my heart, just based off of my personal story that I'll share with you all in a little bit. And I want to thank everyone out there who's watching. Just thank you for taking the time out, like Annie said, during your vacation time to talk about an important subject of self-care. If you do a quick Google search, that's how I live my life sometimes. Self-care, if you Google self-care, it's the practice of taking action to preserve or improve one's own health. And I think that is so important because the term self-care, I know for me and my family, really showed itself evident in 2020. Now, we had some things going on before 2020, but of course, last year is when, we all started to hear self-care is important. Self-care is important because we were in a situation that we hadn't found ourselves in before. So the first thing I want to do is just kind of give you a personal story that's near and dear to my heart and why I believe that self-care is so important. So my husband and I, he's retired now, I'm still active duty military. We PCS'd from Ramstein Air Base, and we PCS'd to San Antonio, Texas. And if you've ever been in Europe and come into stateside, specifically the San Antonio, Texas area, there is a culture shift there, right? In Europe, it's a little slower paced, a little more family oriented. You can travel, you see all of these different things. And then we come to the beautiful state of Texas, and we go from the Autobahn to the different highways and those different things, and just trying to get acclimated from overseas to stateside, that was a little challenging for us. So we PCS'd here in 2016, and I would say from the year of 2017 was like our gap year. And if you know what a gap year is, that's when you just kind of take time off and you kind of just wing it. And that's what we did when we were transitioning. I know for me, I think that was the hardest transition coming from overseas to the States, just because the culture is different. And we have been gone for 3 years. And in that time, him and I had deployed. We had went to our, professional military education, which is Senior NCO Academy. We've gone TDY, temporary duty, and we were trying to hold our little family of 4 together, right? So we get here and things have changed, and we're in Texas. Our families are in Georgia and Ohio. And it was literally just the 4 of us. Like, we had to depend on ourselves because this was a new transition for all of us. So with all of that happening, and I did have permission from my husband to talk about this, during that time, he had some mental health challenges during that transition. And so did I. And with that, we were in a period of our lives where we felt like we didn't have anyone. And I think it just goes with the military transition from, just coming to a different area, having to start over, learning the way that things work here and at this installation in that local area, making sure your kids are in a good school, just all of those things that come with military families. And with that, it kind of set us back a little bit. My husband had some anxiety issues. I had some, but mine were under the surface. And, it even went to the point where he had to be hospitalized for a little while just so we can get back on track. And during that time, I felt as though I was alone. Now, I had a lot of friends and family, but you never want to, in a sense, burden people with your things that you have going on, right? Because everyone has life going on. So with that, I kind of created SheSpeakz because I needed a community. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And self-care was so important to me because I felt as though I was losing myself, being a wife and a mom and an employee and a leader and just being who I was. And I felt I had lost who I was in that transition, in those different roles. And I had to get back to me. So I really had to remember that self-care isn't just what's on the surface, going to go get a pedicure, going to go get a manicure. That's nice. But it's also that internal work that needs to be done as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is, how do you make time for self-care when all of these things are going on? You have to make the time. I know for me, I would say, oh, I have to take the time. Oh, I have to do different things. But we have to be conscious about making that time for self-care. Shutting down your phone, maybe unplugging over the weekend, becoming one with nature, going on walks, cutting off the TV, doing those different things. You make that time by making sure that you set aside that time, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day. I know for me personally, I love the mornings. Now, I do have a little bit of insomnia, so I am up around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, but that's my time. That's the time for me. It's peaceful. My family is still asleep, and I'm allowed to just be in the moment, right? So sometimes we have to change our language, and instead of taking the time, make the time, make a conscious effort to make sure that you're implementing self-care.
I love that, Sheneke, and I put it in the chat that people have to make the time. Tommy Rush, thanks for being on today. Sheneke, Tommy has a question in the chat that she wrote. How do you work through feeling guilty for doing things for yourself? How do you get over past that feeling guilty when you make that time?
So, Tommy, thank you for that question. That is something that I really had to get over, right? Because I did have the mom guilt. Oh, while I'm out here with my doors shut and I'm not allowing anyone in because I just need that time. Are my kids being fed? are they getting what they need? It's a hard thing to get over, but we have to remember, if we don't take care of ourselves, we're not going to be able to give them the best version of us. So it's kind of like being an introvert, right? You go out and you're going shopping, and it's just a lot of people, and you run into someone, and then you run into someone else, and you're doing all this talking. Then you have to go home and you have to recharge. That's what it is when it comes to not feeling guilty. Because if you notice, I know for me, when I don't get that time, I get cranky, I get irritable, and I'm just being honest. And I realize, it's time for me to step back. I'm doing too much. So we have to remember that you can't pour from an empty cup. And I know we've heard that before, but it's so true, because once you've given all of your energy to everyone else, if you don't have that energy for yourself, you're not going to be any good at work, at home, to your girlfriends, or, in any of those circles. So it's a hard thing to do, but I will say you have to push through that, and you have to remember that you are worth and you deserve that time to yourself. You are worth and you deserve that self-care so that you can go out and be the best version of yourself.
Sheneke, I just have to throw one thing in here and say that how I got myself over it was that I know that I have to eat in order to be healthy, to take care of my family. And self-care is a way of feeding myself so that I can be there for other people. And so I think that's just what that was my way of doing it.
Yeah, that's a nice way to think about that too. And it makes perfect sense. And it's funny because Annie, if I run into people who don't remember to eat in the physical sense. And I'm like, how do you not remember to eat? Like, this is how you keep your energy. So thank you for sharing that analogy. That is a good one. I'm actually going to use that one myself.
Because I totally get what Tommy said. I am a big one about feeling the guilt of taking time for myself, but it's fueling that self-care, eating 3 meals a day of some kind, or 2 meals a day, eating healthy food, and fueling your body is a requirement to take care of yourself. And that self-care is a part of our fuel.
Yes, ma'am. I agree. Thank you so much for that. So now I just want to talk about knowing your triggers when it comes to self-care, right? And I say that because, like I said earlier, there were times where I realized that I wasn't taking care of myself. Like I said, I would start to get grouchy. I would be upset. My emotions would be out of whack. And you have to know what is going to trigger you. Some triggers, and the way I view triggers are, what are the things that are keeping you from that self-care? So there are some of us who we take on a lot. We always answering the phone when a friend calls. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? You have to be there for your tribe and your circle and your family. But what you also have to remember is, how much can you take on having this conversation or picking up the phone? And I say that because there are times where you may want to give, and give, because maybe you know what it feels like to be in a position where you didn't have someone when you needed them. And for me, that's a trigger. I know what it's like to be a caretaker and not feel like I can reach out to someone, right? But I also have to remember that I don't have to be that person that reaches out, or, is always there when someone is reaching out. Maybe I can send them in a different direction or give them help in another way. And you have to know your triggers, because sometimes we want to be what someone wasn't for us, and that's fine. But we also have to set boundaries. So when I say know your triggers, know what it is that's continuously keeping you from that self-care, but also know when you have to create those boundaries so that you don't overdo it. I hope that makes sense.
That does.
Okay. So next, I would just like to move into creating or finding what you need, right? And this is where I want to go into the SheSpeakz arena. So it is a platform, but I created it, and little did I know at the time that I created it for myself because I thought I was helping others. Because I would talk to other people who had one story, Miss Annie, they're sharing their personal stories with me, someone else sharing their personal stories with me. And I'm like, if I could link these two together, they would know that they are not alone. So if I have a friend who's going through a divorce, and I know it's a very private matter, but this lady is going through one too, maybe I can connect you to so you don't feel as though you have to take this journey alone. Well, for me, I would be up and I would be thinking about just different things that I had going on or how can I help someone else. And I have a sign on my desk that says, create what you wish existed. And I wanted people to know that, yes, when we're going through these different times and we're trying to juggle everything, there's someone else who's walking the same path right along with you. What an amazing thing it would be if we could walk with someone else down the same road because we know what each other is going through. And to me, that's a part of self care. If there's something that you need, but you don't see it, or you don't know about it, or you don't hear it, why not go out and create it yourself? Because all it takes is one person to see, oh, someone has created this support group. Like Miss Annie, you created LTI, a different option for those of us that are transitioned out of the military. And I know for me personally, this was amazing because it was a different perspective. You had a passion, you saw something that needed to be created, and boom, here we are now, and it has impacted so many lives. So sometimes a form of self care is creating or finding what you need so that other people know, one, they have a safe space, which is important when it comes to self care, and two, they have a place to go to talk about those different things that they may not be able to talk about with other people otherwise. So I think that's
That's awesome.
important. Creating,
I,
finding,
I,
what you need.
I love that, Shanika, and that goes along with the comment that Rain Miranda put on. And thanks for being on with us today, Rain. She said that she wanted to ask what are some strategies or things a person can do to decide what kinds of self care processes work for them. And so it sounds to me like experiment is one of those things. Create what you think you need.
Yes. So some of the strategies or things a person can do to decide what kinds of self-care processes work for them. Thank you, Rain, for asking the question. And I'll be honest, for me, it's been trial and error. Okay. I'm going through this moment right now. How am I handling this? Um, does talking to someone work for me? Um, does this situation right now work for me? Am I able to use these tools? Or maybe these tools don't work for me. Maybe journaling works for someone else. Maybe I'm not a journaler, right? If that's a word. Maybe I just need to sit in a quiet room in the dark and here I go. There goes my self care because I've just shut myself off from the outside. Maybe that self care process works for me. Or maybe I meditation is not for me because in 10 minutes I'm asleep. So maybe I need to go find another avenue. But I think it's a daily process and it's really trial by error. Self-care looks different for everyone. And I think sometimes you just have to figure out what works for you. And you have to, one thing I would say, don't compare your self-care process to other people. I think that's important as well. We see a lot of people who are meditating or they're doing yoga or they're hiking, that may not work for you. But I think as long as you find that self-care process that aligns with your mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional needs, then I think that's how you decide what the self-care process is going to be for you.
I love that you just said that, Shanika, because I think that too often we hear preached at us that this is what you should do for self care. And like you
Mhm.
say, I have a hard time with meditating. I'm that person that's going to be asleep in 10 minutes. And so I think I think it's really important and so I'm so glad you said that what works for one person may not work for another,
Right. Yes,
and not
ma'am.
to give up, to try something else.
Yeah. Yes. Because it's a process day by day. And sometimes we get so, and I have another sign in my office that says, focus on progress, not perfection. We're not always going to get it right the first time, the second time. It may take 10 times. But as long as you get it and it works for you, then I think that's what's important.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So I think
So
the next thing we're talking. Oh, yes, ma'am.
no, I was going to say, you sent me some notes ahead of time. So, you just talked about creating or finding what you need. And
Mhm.
that I think you had as embrace and enjoy the journey. There's a journey in self care.
Yes, ma'am. There is a journey in self care. So, from my experience, I've realized that the journey, one, we have to remember the journey is our journey. And no journey is going to look like someone else's. You may have the same elements, but the walk that you're taking is going to be different. And what I mean by embrace the journey is one, we have to remember our walk is going to be different. Two, we have to do what works for us. And in some cases, what works for us and our families. Because what worked for my mom a few years ago may not work for me now in 2021. And that's what we have to remember. And when I say embrace the journey, every day is an opportunity to try it over again. Now, my family and I, we have been through some personal struggles as a family and individually. But at the end of it, we've learned that each step in that journey has gotten us to where we are today. And I don't think anyone should ever downplay your journey or your experiences in that journey, because that makes you who you are, and it allows you to speak with a boldness and from experience. And I just think you should embrace whatever it is that comes your way, because you won't always be there, right? Um, and the key is, even if we're in dark spaces, the key is to not stay there. So I have this saying where I say, follow the light until you become light. And that means there's going to be someone in your life who is going to speak into you, someone who's going to encourage you along the way. And you may be in a space where you can't be that light. But as long as you hear those words, or you see someone who is taking those punches just like you are, but they're still getting back up and they're moving every day, then to me, that's the important piece. Embrace all pieces of your journey, the good and the bad, because that is what makes you who you are. So that's what I mean by embrace the journey.
Okay, awesome. So we had a viewer post in the chat that they'd like to
Mhm.
thank us, and you're welcome, and thank you for being with us. And the question that they had for you, Shanika, is how do you
Mhm.
determine how much time is needed for self care? Because this person said sometimes they want to shut off for days, but they know that that's not necessarily conducive for their family.
So when it comes to how much time, I think that is something that you have to, this is where I say you have to know your triggers. You have to find and create what you need, and then you have to make that time. So what I would say is, even though you want to cut off for days, there are sometimes in that self-care where we have to pull in professionals. And what I mean by that is medical professionals, mental health professionals, to find out, why is it that you want to shut off for days? Is it because you just don't want to be bothered? Or is there some internal work that you need to do to help pull you out of that space? Right? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with shutting off for days, but you have to get to the root as to why. Are you grieving? Are you depressed? Is there anxiety? Those different things, because sometimes we want to label it ourselves, but we don't know that there truly is something going on. So that would be my first suggestion. And this is personal experience. When you get comfortable with withdrawing for days, it's deeper than a self-care issue, in my personal opinion. You need to find out why. Why is it that you want to cut off yourself from the very people that you love for days? Now, if it's just, oh, because the kids are wearing me out and I need to get some rest, that's different. But if it's I get a little overwhelmed, things just aren't going the way I think they should, then I think that's when we should start pulling in that professional piece. So I think it just depends on what your background is, the things that you've been through, and where you currently are. Because if there are some things that you haven't dealt with a medical or mental health professional, they may be able to give you the tools that you need so that you don't want to cut off for days, but maybe you're able to adjust that. And it's like, okay, well, I can't do days, but can y'all give me half a day? I'm going to go here. And I just need some time to myself. And it's when you're a primary caregiver, or yes, a primary caregiver, that comes with a lot of other pieces that you probably need to sort out. But I think it just depends on your situation, what you've gone through, and also just where you are in life. So I wouldn't say there is too much time, but I think there may be some different factors that need to be put into place as well.
And I think that's a good thought, because we have to remember that sometimes we're afraid to tell our medical professionals how we're feeling inside about those kinds of things. And I know my personal primary care doctor; she's really good about asking me those questions and being aware of that. And one of the things that I think we sometimes we think is like, oh, we don't want to share that laundry with our primary care doctors, but you know what? They've heard worse.
Yes.
And so there's nothing that we can tell them that's going to shock them. And so
Right.
they are trained to take care of us, and we need to let them do that. So my friend Melissa, she's our awesome virtual assistant for LTI. Couldn't live without Melissa. She has a question, Sheneke, and she asks, have you ever used an accountability partner to reach your self-care goals? So that seems like a good idea. What do you think about that?
I think it's very important. Just like we have accountability partners who, we bring on when we're trying to reach our fitness goals. I do think that an accountability partner for your self-care goals are important. And yes, I have had people who have called me out on my self-care. They have noticed that I am doing a lot of running around. Like maybe when I am out, I'm out more days than I'm in my house. And then they'll start asking questions. Okay, so it's usually, okay, sis, so what are you doing? I've seen the outside more than I've seen the inside of your house. Are you okay? You're doing a lot of running around. I've had some who have said, okay, so have you read today? Have you taken your time for yourself today? Or they'll notice that maybe I'm online a little more than usual. And then they'll say, okay, so do you have a project coming up? What's going on? Because I've noticed, and that's the beauty of having an accountability partner. And keep in mind now, your accountability partner doesn't always have to be a friend or a family member. It can be someone in a social circle, it can be an associate, but someone who's going to hold you accountable. They're going to be able to hear you even when you don't say anything. So, yes, I do believe that accountability partners are important.
Awesome. Great. Okay.
I think we can move on to our last one, which is my favorite, the connecting with others. And in this digital age, we can connect in so many different ways, right? And what I love is how the power of social media and digital platforms are able to connect us in ways that we may not have imagined in the past. So when it comes to connecting with others, we have to remember that that human connection is so important. And you may be thinking, well, how can we make sure we have the human connection if everything is done digitally? There are ways. I can attest to that because this is one way right here, right? We are all over the United States and in some different countries, but we are here to talk about a common subject, which is the subject of self-care. And when I say the human connection, it's getting to know different individuals who may be walking the same path as you, um, putting aside any physical differences and realizing that we are human and we are also walking the same journey. Other ways to connect, of course, safely is in person. I have people that I connect with maybe once a month or once every other month. And we go and we have appetizers and we have a drink and we are able to talk. Our phones are down. Our spouses are aware of, what we're out doing. So the kids aren't calling all the time. And we're able to sit there and connect. And I just think that is so important. And when I say connect, I mean getting to know little things about each other, whether it's a birthday or an anniversary, or maybe they're working on their PhD, or maybe it's a time of year that maybe isn't the best for them, but you remember that and it's sending a note. Hey, I'm thinking about you. If you need anything, let me know. So also with self-care, connecting is very important. We are human beings and we need each other. If you don't think so, I want you to experiment and I want you to see how someone reacts when you take the time to listen to them or look them in their eye when they're having a conversation, or put your phone down when you're at dinner or out to eat or what have you, and see how they thrive towards the conversations that you're having. So just don't forget the human connection. That is very important. As much as we say we don't need people and we're independent and I got this, we really do need each other. So just make sure that's a part of your self-care as well. That human connection. And Miss
Yeah,
Amy,
and I
I
think
think.
that's really important, Shanika, that you are that you say that even in this digital world, and that's why if for people who make appointments with me, I always push us to Zoom or a way that we can see each other, because
Yes.
as we've been cooped up in our homes over these past 2 years, we haven't seen enough of each other, and so
Yes.
I don't care what the other person looks like on the end. They can be wearing their jammies; it doesn't bother me. Just to be able to see their face, their eyes, I
Yes.
think it just changes a relationship and can build a relationship from the start. So thank you for reminding us that that even in this digital age, we can build connections with people.
Yes, ma'am.
And so
Thank
I'm
you.
just going to check our chat here for just a second and see what I see for questions. Let's see. Oh, and Melissa put that she invites people to meetups offer over coffee, and they walk and talk to get fresh air and numbers to their step counts. And I love that. And Helen has a question. She said, what are some of the ways that we can connect when we aren't allowed to be in person? And I think you mentioned two. The one is the virtual, way. And then about sending people a note. So many people forget about that nowadays, don't they? Just that snail mail still works.
Yes, it does. So I have always created a habit. I buy greeting cards, whether I'm at Walmart or the Dollar Tree, and I buy stamps. And every now and then I'll just send a note in the mail, just checking up on you, hope all is well. And even that connection is amazing because we don't get a lot of personal mail or personal letters anymore. So, Miss Helen, yes, you can utilize Zoom, you can utilize Google Meets. There are a lot of different ways, but also things have changed so much that they have created where you can watch movies together, you can do watch parties, you can also play games online. I've done that as well. It's amazing just how interesting it has been to be able to connect and keep in touch with people, although we cannot do it in person.
Awesome. And I
Yes,
have
ma'am.
seen some of that. I haven't tried it yet, the games online. And so I'm curious to think about doing that someday to play a game online with somebody. We started
Yes.
that a while ago though, like that Words with Friends game, even before we were had
Yes.
other games online. Words with Friends was a way of connecting with people.
Yes, ma'am.
So so I want to go over at the to make sure that we'll call it in the military, we call it, do you have any alibis? So let's go back and just highlight again the things that you've talked about. Sheneke, number one, defining what self-care is to you. That's the first thing and that you talked about. Anything else you want to throw into the mix for people?
For those of you that didn't get to hear it earlier, just self-care is what you make it. It looks different for everyone. Don't judge and don't allow others to judge you in regards to your self-care methods.
Awesome. Okay. Number two, make time for self care. You didn't say take time for self care.
No, ma'am, because when we say we're going to take the time, there's always something that's taking the time for us. So we have to consciously make the time, consciously set aside that time, put a reminder on your phone, block some time out, write it down in your planner, but make that time and make sure you're consistent.
Awesome. Okay. And then know your triggers.
Yes. So when it comes to self care, make sure that you know why you're giving so much to others and not giving to yourself. That's important because that is going to help you realize why you're overgiving and undergiving to yourself.
Okay. Awesome. Then create or find what you need.
In this age, you can create a safe space and invite other people, or there are safe spaces that have been created, and all you have to do is go out there and find them. So either create or find what you need, but it's out there.
And I will remind everybody that's on with us that that's what Sheneke did with when she created SheSpeakz. She created a safe space for herself, but in creating that safe space for herself, she has created a safe space for you. So make sure you look and connect with Sheneke on social media because she's out there. She's on LinkedIn and she's on Facebook and she's on Instagram. So you look for Sheneke and you look for SheSpeakz and connect with her. Then, Sheneke, you talked about embracing the journey.
Yes, ma'am. Everyone just needs to remember that your journey is your journey and embrace every piece of that, the good and the bad, because that has created who you are today.
And I love that. What you said, that every part of the journey makes you who you are. That's so critical. And not to think that sometimes we think that those things that we go through aren't good, but they really they make us good for other people. And then lastly, you talked about the importance of human connection.
Yes, we are human beings and we need each other and reach out and connect, whether in person, safely, of course, or virtually. But either way it goes, we all need that human connection.
Okay, great. So Adra Brown, thank you for being on. She posted in the chat a question. What tools did you use to start to sort out your time for self-care?
Oh, so the tools that I use to start to sort out my time for self-care, I'll be honest, I grabbed a pen and a piece of paper and I wrote down how I felt, where I wanted to be, and then I just started researching the different ways for me to get there. When I say I wrote down how I felt, why do I feel tired? Why do I feel alone? Why do I feel like I have to show up in certain places? Who am I trying to impress? Like I wrote that stuff down. And then with that, once I wrote it down and then I just started piece by piece, piece by piece. You can't do it all at once. And I just focused on one area that I needed to focus on, and then I moved on to the next one. So that's how I sorted out the time for my self-care. So if I knew that I wasn't eating right, then I would do my research and figure out, okay, what are some quick ways that I can nourish myself? If I wasn't working out like I was supposed to, okay, so how can I start in this area? Accountability partner, or maybe it's walking for 5 or 10 minutes around. Everything has to start off small. I mean, I think in this day and age, we see the end picture, but we don't realize that it's the small steps that we take every day that's going to help us get there. And when it comes to just sorting it out, like I said, you have to try it. Maybe it may not work for you, but as long as you have that self-determination and just get up every day and make sure you have somebody you can call on. That's how I sorted that out too. So I hope that answered her question.
Awesome. Thank you, Sheneke. I cannot say thank you enough for the time that you've spent with us today. During this holiday period, sometimes some of us struggle. And so that's why
Yes.
we interrupt it with this training and coaching call instead of doing it earlier in the month, just to make sure we got it in. I think it's really important to talk about taking care of ourselves when we are right in the middle of it. In
Yes.
this season, because the holidays are challenging for some people,
Yes.
and so it can be tough. So thank you so much for what you do every day to take care of people. Thank you for being here with us today. I would be remiss if I didn't remind people that the Leader Transition Institute has a cohort of Changing Focus, Moving from We to Me, starting in January. I am going to put the banner up for that right now. If you want to learn about changing focus, moving from we to me, go to this link, and I'm going to put it in the chat here, and so that we get that up where you can find it. Juggling all this stuff here. Okay, here we go. So go to this link and you'll find a video about changing focus, moving from we to me. If you are at any phase, any part of your military transition, even if you're 10 or 15 years past your military transition, changing focus is a safe space for you, and we can help you move forward. We welcome spouses to participate with their service members or on their own, because you are welcome, and it is free. There is a $35 deposit, but after you show up and complete your session, we send that money back to you. So, and thank you. Yes, Tommy says changing focus is self-care, and I thank you for that. Yes,
Yes.
that's how we consider it. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to take this down. Okay, here we go. So thank you so much, Sheneke, for spending time with us today. Thank you, everybody who has been here live with us, and thank you for those of you who come back and look at our video later. Thank you for doing that. If you have any questions, please put them, or comments, please still put them into the chat wherever you see this video, because we come back to it periodically and we will make sure that we address your questions and your comments. So thank you so much, and have a very happy new year, and we'll see you in 2022. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
There's class on.